everyone, PushingUpRoses here. Today I'm discussing The Adventures of Willy Beamish, which is by far one of the most bizarre adventure games I've ever played. Even today, it still stands out to me as an anomalous title, and it's hard to compare it to anything else I've played. This title was developed by Dynamics, who had been making games since the mid-1980s, but in 1990 they were bought by Sierra, and after that is when they made their most famous titles like The Incredible Machine, Tribes, and Betrayal at Krondor. But Willy Beamish is definitely their weirdest endeavor. You play a precocious, prepubescent boy living in perfect white suburbia with his stereotypical family, and he's just trying to be a kid. And I gotta say, there just isn't enough media featuring rambunctious yet well-meaning boys in pop culture. Your main goal is to get into the Nintari Championships. Nintari. I get it. Willy dreams of becoming the Nintari victor, but of course it costs money to get into the competition, so that is one of our main goals as the player, finding some cash. However, Willy has to contend with your basic kid problems like bullies, family life, evil babysitters that turn into blood-sucking vampire bats, plumbers, and oh yes, putting a band-aid on a cut. The story is meant to be viewed from the perspective of a kid. It has a lot of toilet humor, or should I say turlet humor.
And don't use the last stall over there. Had to pour the turpentine down the toilet.
And puzzles that involve things you would do as someone Willy's age, like putting your frog, who is named Horny by the way, into a frog jumping competition, one of my personal favorite pastimes, doing things with your best friends, and occasionally being visited by your freaky ghost grandpa. He's supposed to act as your conscience, but you can't convince me that that's not Harry Carey. But not all is well in this quirky town of Frumpton. Willy's video game privileges are taken away due to his bad grades, his father loses his job, and the plumbers are on strike, causing the water to turn into thick brown sludge, causing everyone else to smell and look like dumpster fires. The game's villainess is Leona, the head of a powerful company called Toot Sweet, who wants the town of Frumpton under her power. She has a lip problem. They look like those disgusting red candy wax lips that I'm pretty sure nobody actually ate or even liked. Why the fuck would I want candy in the shape of lips? That's weird. I don't want to eat a mouth. So I like the idea of playing as a kid in this game. It's far more rare to play as one versus the amount of titles that has you playing either a young adult or just an adult. I can think of some off the top of my head, but in general, there are just more titles that have older protagonists. That being said, even though you play as a kid, that does not mean this is a kid's game. You have your fart jokes, sure, but this game has a very blatant, very bizarre sexual nature that can be seen everywhere. Every female character is stacked, especially this nurse. There's a scene where Willy barges in on his teenage sister taking a bath. There's this. Yeehaw! And his frog's name is Horny, for Christ's sake.
Horny, no!
This adult-flavored humor isn't exactly new when it comes to children's cartoons.
I found prints! No, fingerprints. I don't think so.
The Animaniacs got some pretty insane stuff past the censors in the early 90s, and cartoons like SpongeBob SquarePants have humor that children perhaps won't get but their parents would. But I do find these examples different because at least we have an idea of who these cartoons' target audiences are. I have no idea who Willy Beamish is targeting. The humor is too frequently adult to be strictly for young players, but it's too immature for adults in certain parts. In between the jokes about sex and flatulence are satirical scenes that young people would likely not get. One is this scene referring to the Twilight Zone, another is this scene where you have to escape a brutal but musical street gang referencing West Side Story. Even Leona is a parody of real-life businesswoman Leona Hemsley, and here's a character based on Julia Child for no reason. Honestly, the whole game plays out as a satire akin to something like Married with Children. The hot blonde sister, the mom that reminds me of Peg Bundy, and the beleaguered dad. It seems to be trying to make fun of stereotypical families. But there is still something seriously off-kilter about the mood of this game. It's like a weird layered casserole that has a mix of ingredients that may or may not work, but when you taste it, you don't even know if you like it. Looking at the ads and considering those satirical moments, however, I've surmised that this game was in fact meant to be for adults, though if you ask me, that was not made clear enough. A tagline in an ad for the game says, "A cynical Saturday morning cartoon for twisted adults," and in a fun font right beneath that, "and totally warped kids." It is so strange to think that a company made and advertised some kind of naughty, immature game for kids, because this game was also released on the Sega CD, a console primarily targeted towards kids. I'm sure a lot of people thought it was also for them. This also isn't the first time we've seen adult games being advertised to kids like this either. Remember the temporary tattoos included with Mortal Kombat back in the day? Yep. Some would argue that the game does fit in with what was popular in the early 90s, adult cartoons like The Simpsons, who featured a young, troublemaking boy as the main character. In fact, there's a few nods to The Simpsons, such as the dog being named Duffy, after Duff Beer, presumably, and this looks like it could even be Marge. This adult cartoon thing the game is trying to achieve doesn't quite work because Willy never got to the point of being that mischievous. Yeah, he has some wisecracks, and he's a little mean to his sister, but overall he's pretty tame. Honestly, a big reason the tone skips all over the place is because of the added voice acting to the CD-ROM version. Everyone sounds completely obnoxious, and it ranges from sounding too cutesy,
The cocoa there are that plum sweet is at the top like Jubilee.
to just odd.
The Beamish front stoop is covered with skid marks from Willy's skateboard.
A lot of the time, the voices don't match the characters, and I feel like the game reads a lot better without them.
Sorry, Sonny. You can't get in here without a security pass.
Beamish has this certain charm that I can't resist. Maybe because in some ways it does remind me of that first week of summer vacation and having this agenda you set as a kid.
All right, school's history. Summer's here. Time to get rid of this school junk and get home to play some Nintari.
Or maybe it's because it's just weird. I mean, look at it. It looks weird. The characters look weird. Everything is weird. The art in this game ranges from pretty nice to scribbly. The animation is okay, it's not quite on the level of Valanice and her squiggly Dorito chip eyes, but it is inconsistent. Sometimes these character portraits look detailed, and other times they look like a child crapped them out. I don't know why so few video games got this design right. Usually adventure games have memorable soundtracks. Some of my favorites include Grim Fandango, Gabriel Knight 1, and King's Quest VI. Willy Beamish has a somewhat catchy intro song, but little else. I genuinely cannot recall any tracks from this game, and even the title song isn't that memorable. In fact, even the cast of wacky characters aren't the most notable. I couldn't remember their names, unlike characters from other adventure games that stood the test of time. Manny Calavera, Guybrush Threepwood, King Graham of Daventry, Roger Wilco. These characters have depth and likability, whereas the characters in Beamish just represent a specific archetype.
You know, Clip's father is a millionaire, and he's not as old as Daddy. He made his fortune in women's lingerie.
Their personalities don't quite matter. Even Willy doesn't have that much going on in terms of development. He likes video games, he likes his frog and his friends, and he likes pizza. That's not a bad representation of being a kid. It just can't compete with other media that represents the same thing much better, like Calvin and Hobbes or even Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It may be because the child-to-adult dynamic isn't as solid as something like Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin, though a troublemaker, was blatantly smarter than the adult characters, and adults reading the comic would connect to it. Same thing with the child characters from home movies. But Willy, to me, just reads as a kid. He does happen to outwit the stupider, more corrupt adults, but he does it with his troublemaker skills, not because he's actually smarter than his elders. The most memorable thing about this game is how strange it is, and that's why it's been on my radar for so long. When writing this retrospective, I could barely recall the plot of the game before replaying it because it doesn't have much impact, but I do remember enjoying it, marveling at its eccentricities, reading the funny dialogue, and though the art isn't of the highest caliber, I do remember the settings fondly. The Adventures of Willy Beamish doesn't really hold a candle to other titles that were released around the same time, and a lot of critics found it disappointing, but I maintain that it is different, and for that reason I think it's worth playing if you've never heard of it, because it is a fun little experience filled with weird. And you can tell I'm being serious with that because I have said the word weird 9 times in this video, but that really is the perfect adjective for this title alongside wacky, odd, and just really unusual, but fun. Or did I mean but fun? See, you can tell I've played the game recently because my lowbrow humor meter is way up at the moment. I think if you like Sierra games, you'll also like Willy Beamish, and you may even see the same charm that I do, though I'm curious to know how it plays to someone who has no nostalgia connected to it. This game was recently released on GOG for a very fair price, so go for it. Relive your weird childhood dreams through Willy Beamish. You might not regret buying it, especially if you're a cynical adult or a totally warped kid. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my video on the Adventures of Willy Beamish. Be sure to check out my other adventure game retrospectives, and if that's not your thing, I also have some other weird shit like escapism in video games and video game food. Check out the description for extra links, and as always, I will see you guys in the next one.